Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, where today we are rating the start of every major signing in the Premier League so far this season. Coming up on today's show, we discuss whether Dominic Solanke will work out at Spurs.
Outside of his goals as well, I think he will bring a lot to kind of what Tottenham are building at the moment.
Will Pedro Neto ever thrive amongst the competition at Chelsea?
Are we looking at someone who's a £54 million bench option in the long term?
And did Arsenal actually need to bring in this player? They've got so much depth in defence and maybe not that much depth in other areas of the team, as we've seen with their recent injuries as well. Yes, welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody. Joining me and Mikey today, we've got a real treat for you. It's Fouad Kidani, Spurs fan. I mean, if you don't know who he is, where have you been? SDS, FCM, he's just about everywhere. Fouad, welcome to the Lowdown.
Appreciate you guys having me, man. Good to be here.
It's great to have you on board. And, you know, we're not going to dive into it too much, but it's been a tough week for Spurs.
Listen, I walked in the studio, I saw the shirt straight away, I almost had traumatic flashbacks of, Gabriel, where is he? Someone get him near post, please.
Yeah, because he was in that shirt as well. It felt weird, a North London derby without white and red. It felt very weird.
Yeah, a little bit of different atmosphere, but hey ho, same old result, different year. We're getting used to it now.
Plenty of time to recover. Mikey, just quickly before we get into the show, the Champions League is back. We're filming this on a Wednesday as normal, but some crazy results, or at least some very high-scoring results last night in the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, Bayern Munich, what a start for Vincent Kompany.
Amazing.
Aston Villa as well, what a start for Unai Emery in European competition, or in the Champions League for them as well. I know young boys have had a really bad season so far, haven't they? And they were getting kind of booed off by the fans, but great start for them. Real Madrid almost coming unstuck against Stuttgart in Real Madrid fashion, still managing to win 3-1. And it was funny that you tweeted about Endrick with the Bobby Charlton reference, because as soon as I saw that goal, I was like, oh yeah, bit of Bobby Charlton. So he's following in the veins of the great man. So yeah, good start to the Champions League. It feels like this new Swiss model is gonna, I don't know, I feel like it will come alive after like 5 games. It all felt a little bit inconsequential, didn't it, after those first results? And probably will do even after this first week. But I feel like once it starts getting to kind of October, November time, then we'll see it come alive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the 29th of January, which is the final match day of the Champions League group stage. Cannot wait for that. There's going to be so many teams flying up and down the league, having to do a playoff, getting knocked out of the playoff, not going through automatically. It's going to be a lot of fun. But let's get back to the Premier League and what we're discussing today, which is rating every new major signing. Now, it's a big topic. There have been quite a few, but we're basically going for every signing over £25 million. Some of them, it's fair to say, haven't played that much, so we'll skirt over some of them, but there's plenty to get our teeth stuck into. And first of all, this is absolutely perfect with our special guest Fouad today, but Dominic Solanke was the most expensive one. £55 million to Spurs. He's been unlucky with injury and maybe hasn't hit the ground running as you'd hope, but it is early days.
For me, I think quality signing. I think especially considering 19 goals last season in that Bournemouth side, I thought he kind of carried that team in certain games as well. I think the profile he plays with in terms of physically, the pressing, and just outside of his goals as well, I think he will bring a lot to kind of what Tottenham are building at the moment. I think last year we managed to kind of paper over the goals crack by converting Son from a left winger to a number 9. This season we're seeing him back out on the wing, not looking good. But I think Solanke's going to come in and kind of play a big role in terms of goals, because outside of Son, we never really had any goal scorers kind of chipping in. And the price, I think people will maybe look at and think, oh, it is a bit of a steep one. But I think you look at the strikers market out there at the moment, it's kind of the price of what you have to pay. And I think with Solanke, you have to give him massive credit for how he's developed his game from when he was a hot prospect at Chelsea, had the world at his feet, didn't really work out at Liverpool, went to Bournemouth, and he didn't even hit the ground running straight away. He kind of, once he went to the Championship, he really settled and found his feet and came back with almost like a newfound confidence. So for me, I think this move is just almost like the next step in his career. It's almost like a perfect match in my opinion. So I'm looking at it from both aspects, thinking it's a perfect move and it should work out. As you said, had a couple of chances in the Leicester game and in the Arsenal game. It hasn't really hit the ground running, but I'm expecting a minimum of about 15 goals, league goals at the end of the season. If I had to give it a grade, probably an A signing in my opinion.
I like it. I mean, on his start so far, Mikey, well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's such early days, but it hasn't necessarily fired so far. But then he did miss. He's only played 2 games as well. Missed those 2 in the middle after the Leicester game. But there is so much promise there, as Fouad says, because his season last year at Bournemouth, like not just the 19 goals, but like under the bonnet, as it were, with his stats. I mean, it was remarkable.
Yeah. Like, I mean, his stats last year were amazing. I mean, fourth in the league for non-penalty goals behind, the likes of Watkins, Foden and Haaland. His total XG was fourth as well, although he played a lot more minutes than a number of forwards in the Premier League last year, so he had a little bit of advantage in that sense, but still playing in a Bournemouth side that was, coming to grips with a new style of play under Raiola, also coming to terms with a new kind of position, doing a little bit less work in build-up, but very much finding space in the box. And actually at Spurs this season, we've actually seen his shot numbers so far. Obviously, it's early days, but his shots have generally come closer to goal than they were at Bournemouth. So I think he's also benefiting from having a better quality side around him. However, I do think slightly being let down by what so far has been kind of fairly average delivery, would you say, Fouad? In the final third, I know Brennan Johnson's come under scrutiny.
Son on the wing,
Son as well. And I guess we're hoping. We were speaking about Kulusevski last week, hoping that I guess the likes of Kulusevski and Maddison can really step up as creators. Absolutely. Right? Then I think we will see Solanke really come into his own. But like you were saying, Fouad, I think probably the most notable thing we've seen so far from him has been his defensive work rate. He's making more tackles and interceptions a game than Bentancur, Basuma, Dragajin and Van der Ven.
Wow.
So he has been quite notable in that sense.
Pressing from the front.
And again, in the game against Arsenal, which I know Spurs fans are feeling a little bit down about it, especially the fact it's 3 in a row at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium that they've lost as well. It could have still gone either way, that game. It could have still gone either way. And I think off the ball, Solanke offered a lot in that match. And I think in those big games against the likes of Arsenal, against, the return fixture against Newcastle later in the season, Man United when they play them, Aston Villa, there are so many crunch games for Spurs this season in terms of going for the top 4. Mm-hmm. There are about 5 or 6 teams all going for the 3rd and 4th positions that I think Solanke is going to be a real asset off the ball in that sense. I think I don't know if I can call it an A because he's yet to produce a goal or an assist. But
I'm calling it an A off the promise of
what could happen.
What could happen. The optimistic in me.
I feel like a B plus. I've liked what I've seen so far. But it kind of depends whether Ange can get the rest of the attack working for him.
Yeah. I mean, let's touch quickly on a point you mentioned there, Mikey, about the delivery from wide before we move away from Spurs and Solanke, Fouad, because a lot of people are giving Brennan Johnson in particular quite a lot of stick on the back of Sunday. Mm-hmm. Son hasn't started the season particularly well, as you say. Is this the time that you want to see Odobert given a run in the side as a starter?
100%. I think his debut, he looked brilliant, and I think he's a player similar like with Archie Gray and Bergvall as well. Although they're 18, 19, I think the ceiling can be very high for these kids. And the issue, I think, with Brennan Johnson that he has is the fee that he kind of got signed with. And I think it was a position that really needed stiff competition for Kulusevski. Because as you said, the quality's there, but the consistency really hasn't been. So we wanted someone to kind of push him that extra bit. We don't feel like Brennan Johnson maybe is of that kind of caliber. But Odobert, I feel like low risk. Getting him in from Burnley, I think the upside is so great. And the first couple of games from what I've seen, I was surprised not to see him start in the North London derby. But even when he came on, gave a little bit of flashes of what he can do. For me, 1v1, speed, and kind of that ability to kind of produce something in the final third. That's maybe where I only have question marks on him. But I think the future's really bright for him. And I hope him, Bergvall, and Gray all kind of get good, solid runs at some point this season. Even if not in the league, hopefully in the Europa League.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great to see when Odobert came in, they started doubling up on him, and that just creates space for other players. It felt like Brennan Johnson it just wasn't his best game. It happens. He's still a young player that's developing, but yeah, Odobert does look really promising. Mikey, let's move on to Pedro Neto, next most expensive signing, £54 million to Chelsea. What have you made of him so far? It hasn't been... There's maybe been other forwards that have shone for Chelsea in his place.
So first of all, are we agreeing on an A for Solanke then? feel like we.
I think let's say B. I think
B
let's
plus.
say B.
Should we?
B plus. Yeah,
B
let's be
plus?
generous.
B
Yeah.
plus is nice. I like
yeah,
that.
meet
I like
in the
that.
middle, meet in the
Yeah.
middle. All right. Yeah, I think Neto has generally had a positive start to life at Chelsea, hasn't he? Got that assist on his debut against Wolves. Obviously, came on for Mudryk at half time in that game. But yeah, the problem with Chelsea is that the winger situation has been so fluid at the start of the season. Given the way that the transfer window went, it still feels like Maresca is kind of in pre-season with this Chelsea squad, doesn't it? Because he's just like he's yet to make his mind up yet, and maybe he won't. Maybe he will just like change the wingers game to game. But you know, he was subbed at half time for Sancho in the 1-0 win against Bournemouth on the weekend,
and it came off.
And it really came off. I mean, Sancho had his best Premier League game in probably about 2 years. Like he looked so good, and Nkunku having a big part to play in that, of course, as well, in terms of the goal. And they already look like they've got a relationship there, Sancho and Nkunku. Like, I don't know, like it already feels like Neto, despite costing so much money, he's not a guaranteed starter for Chelsea. But he has generally been pretty positive. He's created 4 chances in 180 minutes. I think Cole Palmer is the only player in the team who's created more. And all of his underlying stats look pretty good. Progressive carries are at 6 per 90, which is really, really impressive. That's the best of his career. However, he's not been so good at actually being penetrative and getting into the box. So that's something that, maybe that's a stylistic thing on Maresca's end in terms of their kind of slow build-up. We saw the Sancho assist for Nkunku on the weekend. It wasn't like he was having to break into the box. It was kind of, just a ball in there, fairly speculative, and Nkunku just with just amazing footwork to get away from
and great
from
strength as well. I thought as well, because he's getting a challenge. He sort of has to ride it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's a really exciting thing from a Chelsea perspective. But yeah, with Pedro Neto, I just think I don't know. I guess we could say similar to Solanke. He was injured for 2 out of 4 games. Like Pedro Neto, that injury record does haunt him a little bit. He's only played 1,500 league minutes in 2 of 5 Premier League seasons. So I feel like I want to be a little bit more tentative, but maybe that's a bit, unfair on the player. Like, because if he does stay fit throughout the season, I think he's sensational, and he's a right wing option as well. And with Sancho looking like he's going to be used on the left, maybe Pedro Neto will be up against Madueke in the long term on the right. It's hard to say, isn't it? Like, all of Chelsea's wingers, I guess aside from Mudryk, have had their moments so far this season. They've all looked good at points. But are we looking at someone who's a £54 million bench option in the long term? Like, we'll have to wait and see.
That is the concern for me, where there's too much competition, and then his fitness for me has always been a problem. And I think everybody loves the idea of Pedro Neto more than the actual player, because we see him for about 7 or 8 games a season. He lights up the Premier League and whatever fullback he's up against, and then everyone says, please sign him for my club. Spurs fans, Chelsea fans. And Chelsea fans have got him this summer, and I think it's almost like an interesting to see what happens, because you've got João Felix as well, who I think is going to at some point take a run on the side as well. And I wonder if he does stay fit, is he even going to be playing in his best position? Because you've got Madueke on the right wing, Palmer playing there last season, Felix and Nkunku. Like, the options are so stacked that I don't know if it's ever really going to work out for him. I said he should have actually came to Spurs. And I know I sound selfish here or whatever, but I think that would have been the perfect move for him. Him instead of Brennan Johnson on the weekend, how would that have looked?
Story.
A whole different story. But now you're going to have to be fighting with 7 different guys. You're probably going to be fighting with your hamstrings as well throughout the season. And I don't know if this move is going to... Personally, I'm not that optimistic about it. I think maybe in 2 or 3 years he could end up maybe moving back to Wolves or something.
I think even Arsenal would have been an amazing move for Pedro Neto as
Agree.
well. But like, clearly they weren't willing to spend quite that much on a winger. And again, like, it's a risk, isn't it? Chelsea seem to be the only side out there really willing to take that risk in terms of the money for a player who, does have a questionable fitness record. But I think, he could have thrived at so, like, even, Liverpool as well. Like, he would be an asset to any top Premier League club. And I think on the basis of the last few years, I think he is the best winger that Chelsea have. That's the thing. I think he is the best winger they have. but I just would have liked to. I don't know. I think
if you're playing Parma centre.
Yeah, if you're playing Parma centre, of course. But I think even then, I think Pedro Neto has a bigger, has a bigger body of work than Parma as a winger. I just want to see Maresca put his complete faith in him. I want to see Maresca be like, yeah, we've spent this money on you. You are our starting winger, and it's the others who have to prove themselves a little bit. So far, it feels like everyone's on an even, had an even start, which is probably fair. But I think Pedro Neto, has a better CV.
Let's see. I think what's been interesting so far is that Maresca seems to have made substitutions pretty early in games. And I think he knows that he's got so many players, so many forwards in particular, chomping at the bit to get on and make the difference. Whereas Pochettino, I always thought, was quite slow to react. And Potter, before him, was so slow to react. It'd be like 75 minutes before he made a change. Whereas Maresca is at least being front-footed and being like, proactive. Look, it's not working at half-time. Let's get on Sancho. There'll be game time there for the wingers, but it does feel like for a new manager to have been so bold with his substitutions and actually big calls as well, like getting rid of Raheem Sterling is not an easy call to make for a new manager who's only had one year of top level experience with Leicester. So I've been quietly quite impressed by Maresca so far. Let's move on to what should we grade Neto? I'd say C.
I'd say C.
I would go C plus as well.
C+,
I think
plus,
for the quality
minus,
for the quality of player he is, you almost think it could work out very well, but then at the same time, with all the kind of questions around it of fitness and kind of
I think the fact he was the second biggest transfer fee after Solanke, and I think he carries more risk in that sense, doesn't he? And he's yet to be. Let's go C+. Let's go C+.
Nice. Right, let's move on to Leny Yoro. You guys keep me straight as well if I forget to grade them. Leny Yoro is kind of ungradable. I think this will be very quick to do. Injured in pre-season. I think it was his second appearance was against Arsenal in pre-season. People are super excited for Leny Yoro, quite rightly as well. The words coming out of France are generational talent. The fact Real Madrid were in for him, the fact PSG were in for him. Yeah, they weren't willing to pay that amount of money for him, but given his age, given his quality that he showed at Lille last season, there's so much promise there, but kind of ungradable, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, too early to call.
Yeah. Right, let's move on to Amadou Onana. Now, I think this is going to be potentially right at the top of our list so far, but because Fuad, I don't know about you, but I had maybe some doubts about the fee that Villa paid for him, just because I liked the player at Everton, but I thought that's a good player. He's good at a number of things, but maybe not exceptional at anything.
Yeah.
But so far at Aston Villa, he feels like he's upgraded his game in kind of every facet.
Do you know what? I weirdly feel like he did that last year at Everton, and I remember because he was linked with United in the summer, I remember, and I was thinking, I don't know if you are of that caliber just yet. But then throughout the season, you kind of saw Everton's rejuvenation, and he was kind of the core piece of it. And I was
you were a believer earlier than me. I like it.
I was a disbeliever at first, but I got turned into a believer. And then I was like, you know what? He might be the real deal. And then this summer, I was actually surprised more bigger clubs didn't go in for him. I'm thinking him next to Kobbie Mainoo. How would that look at the moment? So seeing him come into Aston Villa and start this well this quickly is a bit surprising for me. But I think the floor is there to be taken. You've seen Douglas Luiz leave. You've seen McGinn move almost to the wing, if you like. The position is there to be claimed. And I think Villa are going through like a nice transition of where they're trying to elevate their standards. And he's coming as like this big money signing. I think off the back of the Euros he had as well, which was a good one. My name's not Andre, mate. Yeah. We know now. We know damn well who you are now. So fair play to him. He's stepped up to the mantle as much as kind of Villa have stepped up as well, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this briefly. It's randomly brought this up because this did come up in the Football Daily WhatsApp group last night about the potential interest or whether he would have been a good fit for United. Where do you sit on that as a United fan, Mike?
Yeah, I still think for that fee, I think United were wise not to target someone like Onana, just simply because clearly there was only about £50 million tops to spend on a midfielder this summer for United, and I think they kind of had to go safety first with someone like Ugarte, like someone who
like a pure stopper,
just a specialist destroyer. Like I think, like you're saying, like I think Amadou Onana has so many aspects to his game, and yes, was brilliant at Everton last season, but I think in a United side where I don't know that the tactical, there doesn't seem to be much tactical flexibility in the midfield really. I think in terms of someone like Kobbie Mainoo, he's a pretty good driver of the ball. I think that's something we've already seen with Onana at Villa. And to be fair, the thing is, Onana's defensive numbers at Villa have been great. Like he's making more tackles and interceptions than ever before.
Yeah.
And Tielemans is also doing that as well. They look like a really good partnership. But I think Villa's midfield structure in general under Emery has been brilliant. Like they've had so many players in there. You know, Boubacar Kamara has been out injured since February.
Yeah.
And you know, Tielemans and Douglas Luiz did an amazing job there last year. You know, like you say, like McGinn's not even having to be relied upon in that position anymore, even though he was moved a bit deeper at points last season to make up for that. Like, I think, you know, Onana's coming into a team that really works in that part of the field, whereas United needed a bit more of a fixer, and I think 50 million on Onana. I think he could have looked very exposed there, whereas I feel like someone like Ugarte, you know, his job's just going to be to sweep, I think.
Do you know, it's weird because I feel like Onana's like, he's that typical Premier League central midfielder profile. I look at guys like Doucouré a few years ago, Etienne Capoue, where they're number 8s, but they started off maybe as defensive midfielders, but they've almost grown their game that little bit more. So I kind of do hear what you're saying. Maybe him and Kobe would have been 2 8s, but I do think he is capable of, if you ask him to play that 6 role, to just be that sitter and plug, he could do it. But as you say, it could be maybe limiting his game in terms of what we've seen over the past 18 months, especially, for sure.
Some of the touches for Villa so far, like I was watching them against Young Boys last night, and they played, I mean, it was only Young Boys, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to them, but it was a great first game to get in your return to the Champions League for the first time since, I think it's 1983. But some of the touches that he was playing in midfield, the link up with Tielemans, and Jacob Ramsey as well looked really, really sharp. And John Duran, there's this guy coming off the bench that is just so hungry every time he gets off the bench. Scored a spectacular goal, which was then ruled out, unfortunately, because of a handball by Onana. You know, one of those things that happens. But Villa look really, really good, and I think they haven't really been clinical enough in the Premier League so far. I think only Liverpool have created more XG, but so far they haven't really found that attacking edge, and that's partly down to Watkins. You know, he did score 2 against Everton at the weekend, but hasn't started the season as well as he finished last year.
But I think what the most impressive thing is that you, like, not only are Onana and Tielemans holding it down fairly well defensively, like they're both really involved in attacking play. Yeah. They're both picking up such advanced positions. Onana already has 3 goals in all competitions. Tielemans looks really effective up there as well, having played quite an attacking role at points. I think he was being used as a second striker or something last year. So I think it's just once again testament to Emery's ability to use his squad. And I mean, they've got a massive season ahead, haven't they? The amount of games they're going to play is pretty mad, and you know, they've got great squad depth ultimately. But I think we have to give this an A star. I think out of all the players who we've got here, like who's come in and scored like 2 goals in the Premier League from defensive midfield. I guess the only mark against his name is that he lost the ball against Dwight McNeil in the build up to Everton's opener on the weekend. You know, was then subbed in that game. So I think
he got done a little bit dirty with the pass into him, though. I will defend them a little bit there. You know what I mean? So
he's our A star. Come on, we've got to have an A star
for sure.
A star for sure. Right, guys, we've got loads to get through, so let's keep them relatively snappy. We've mentioned them already. Manuel Ugarte, very small sample size so far, Mikey, but looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, he played 17 minutes against Southampton, didn't he? Played 63 minutes against Barnsley. Against Southampton, he was really solid, but United pretty much had the game won by that point. But he completed all his tackles, completed all his passes. I think it's too early to call, but he's looked fine and he's looked fairly composed on the ball. I think the test will be against Crystal Palace, who have like a far better midfield, in my opinion, than Southampton.
I thought you were going to say than United or something.
I mean, on the basis of the last 6 months, you would probably argue that Palace's midfield has been better than United's, performance-wise at least. But yeah, too early to call. But like, he's looked, you know, against Barnsley, again, League One opposition, but like he did actually look quite progressive on the ball as well. So yeah, I don't know what do we call it? Like, it's not completely too early to call, but like, maybe just give it a C.
There was a nice moment where he wins the ball and then plays it to Rashford, who lays it off to Eriksen, who then plays it to Garnacho, and that kind of looks like what Ten Hag's looking to do. It was like Ten Hag's sort of
quick one touch,
direct counter-attacking style instead of a oneer. So let's see whether he can keep that going. I'll talk about João Felix next. Again, difficult to say really. £42 million to Chelsea. Did feel like kind of the strangest of the summer signings, in that he's probably best centrally, where they do have this sort of behemoth in Cole Palmer, who's just not taken a backward step from last year. He also was kind of used as a makeweight to make sure that Atletico Madrid had the money to buy Conor Gallagher, which didn't go down that well with a lot of Chelsea fans, given he was their most used player last term. He's not really been used that much, very limited minutes. Did score an amazing goal against Wolves in that 6-2 victory. I've got my doubts about him long term. I mean, he still hasn't scored over 10 league goals, I think, in a top 5 league season. He hasn't started over 20 league games since his first year at Atletico Madrid. There's fitness issues there. There's consistency issues there. But, he's obviously a great talent, but I'm waiting to see him really show the sort of consistency that, he was bought for £120 million from Benfica, which seems like a long, long time ago. I think at the moment, too early to tell. Maybe with this one, are we going with a sort of C-?
D.
Yeah,
D.
I'm thinking D.
D.
I'm thinking
honestly,
D as well.
He's just almost like the antithesis of the type of footballers I'm just kind of
Not
over.
your
Doesn't
guy.
have a figured out position. Doesn't really have like a standout thing that I can really hang my hat on. Fitness issues. And always kind of a lot of promise, but has never really delivered for me. And I don't know, coming into this Chelsea team, similar issue with Neto, as we said earlier. So much competition, you've got fitness issues, and there are other players who I feel like are going to take their mantle, but we'll see how it goes. I don't have high hopes, personally.
Yeah, I think he's going to struggle for minutes way more than Neto. If you think about Palmer and Nkunku, even like Dewsbury-Hall fighting for those positions, then you look like on the left wing, like Sancho, Neto, and Nkunku can play wide as well. I don't see, Joao Felix isn't a natural winger. He's not a natural centre forward. I think Nicholas Jackson has looked great so far this year. I think, Chelsea's, inability to get a bigger number 9 than Jackson, I don't think is going to actually hurt them this season. I think he's looked really, really sharp.
I think he should this season almost make a specialty of being an impact guy off the bench. I think if he can, in his first game back, got the goal. Mm-hmm. If he can do that, what Trossard does at Arsenal, almost come off the bench every 10, 15 minutes and give them a little bit of magic, give him maybe a goal or an assist. I don't know if he's the type of character who'll be happy to just, sit on the bench, bide his time, but I think that's the way, in my opinion, he kind of wins his place in the team. It's not going to be through Europa Conference League performances. I don't think they'll take much stock in that, in my opinion.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think D is probably fair. It's a little bit confusing about what happens in the future there as well. Let's move on to Riccardo Calafiori, £42 million to Arsenal. Fuad, again, he's only played 42 minutes. It's too early. And Urian Timber does look really good if he's going to play as left back as well.
He's almost like a new signing, isn't he, after having spent the last year. But I think Calafiori, it's good competition. I think this is what you want when you're competing at the top, where you can drop a player or he goes out of form and you have just as much quality stepping in. I think throughout the Euros and last season, obviously with Bologna helping them qualify Champions League, he showed his ability. And for the price they paid, I think it's actually a fairly reasonable price as well. And can cover multiple positions. I think at the moment we might not have seen anything yet, but sometimes I think that can be a good thing, especially for defenders in the Premier League. You come in and make a mistake, they will write you off quicker than you can blink. I've seen Stasic, Savic, Kirikesh, so many foreign defenders come over the year. Those first couple of games you get judged very harshly. So I think Arteta's probably doing a smart thing and just kind of letting him settle, see the atmosphere, get used to your teammates and kind of the tactic that we play in. Because last season he was playing in the back 3. Now you're in a back 4 playing left back. So whole different system to kind of adapt to. But I actually think it's going to be a very good signing, annoyingly.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I feel like a couple of years ago, Arsenal didn't really have any depth behind Gabriel and Saliba, but now they've got so much depth in defence and maybe not that much depth in other areas of the team, as we've seen with their recent injuries as well. But yeah, I think he's going to be a great signing. Just it's probably too early to really grade him so far, Mikey.
Yeah, it was telling that he came on in the Brighton game when Arsenal were almost kind of just hanging on, with 10 men. And he did, Arteta did move to that back 3. We saw him move to a back 3 against Spurs as well, didn't we? Yeah. It seems to be something that's going to be a theme of this season in terms of Arteta's way of grinding out results in tough games. And he came on as that left-sided centre-back. So I think there is something there, and it feels like maybe for now he's just going to be used in that way. And it was also telling that, in the summer, Arteta said that he'd been watching him for a year, and it wasn't even just his skill set; it was just the vibe that he gives off as a player.
Don't say the A word. Don't say the A word. I've seen way too much of that on Twitter.
Well, I mean, obviously it helps that he's incredibly good looking as well. And, like, obviously, Mikel Arteta kind of, maybe a kindred spirit in that sense. But like, I don't know. There's obviously that, but the one thing I will say is, not to compare it to João Felix, because this is a player who's really on the up. He's only 22 years old. He's yet to have a difficult spell in his career. Calafiori, at least at a senior level, and of course, showed that character. In a struggling Italy side at the Euros as well. So certainly does have a lot of character, but quite a lot of money. Where Arsenal did end up just about getting that Sterling loan over the line on the last day of the season. Like I think like, could Arsenal have been a bit more punchy with a forward target and put their faith more in Timber and Zinchenko being able to cover at left back, and the fact that Timber can also cover for Gabriel and Kivior. Like they already have depth there, and they didn't struggle. I know Saliba stayed fit all season last year, but they just do have cover there already, and I do think that's where this transfer gets marked down a little bit, is because we yet to see Calafiori start, and it's a lot of money for a bench option when Arsenal going forward, I think still, they still lack depth in certain areas. Having said that, I don't know, maybe a B-, maybe a B. I don't know what you guys are thinking on this.
The only thing I would say is if you look at kind of those left-back options, I don't think Zinchenko has exactly covered himself in glory. I think Kivior was a stopgap. And I think Timber, he's playing left-back for Arsenal, but let's be honest, he's not a left-back. He spent most of his career playing centre-back and right-back. So I think it's working well now. But the actual permanent solution will eventually be him. It's just a kind of matter of timing, I think, in my opinion. I would personally give it a B-.
Yeah, okay. I think that's about fair. Okay, cool. Guys, we've got loads to get through. Mikey, Georginio Rutter, £40 million to Brighton. Haven't seen much of him.
Yeah, again, massive fee. I mean, it's a club record fee for Brighton, isn't it? And given he only scored 7 goals for a free-scoring Leeds side in the Championship last year, it did seem a lot, especially given that he struggled when he went to Leeds initially. But he has looked fairly good. Like, I mean, he came on for the final 20 minutes against Arsenal, had 3 shots. He had another 3 shots and created 2 chances against Ipswich. I know Ipswich were relatively poor against Brighton, and Brighton in general have been a very dominant attacking side. He's got that physicality. He's great in the air too. But I just think the way that Joao Pedro and Danny Welbeck have started the season, it's going to be tough for him to really mark out a starting berth under Hurtzler. I think Hurtzler's got a really good thing going with those two. Evan Ferguson also waiting in the wings as well. So again, there's a lot of competition there. And I just feel that with Joao Pedro, a more proven Premier League attacker, that I think he will struggle to usurp him, and he's not a natural goal scorer, so I don't think he's going to take Welbeck's place. I don't know.
Feeling a D.
It's crazy.
Are you feeling that? I don't
know. I was judging it by what you were saying.
Well, maybe it's just it's hard to judge yet.
Nodding.
Do it. We're putting him in the Joao Felix camp. I mean, I'm happy to. What do you reckon, Ferd? Like,
I'm not moved at all by this one. I think everyone's forgotten about Evan Ferguson as well at Brighton. It's almost like he's the forgotten man. But with Rutter, when Leeds signed him, I was pretty confused because he hadn't exactly lit it up at Hoffenheim before that as well. And then goes to the Championship where you think guys like Solanke, Grealish, usually when they've taken that step down, that's when they step into that kind of mould of, you know what, I'm going to take the mantle of this team. And I don't think he really did that at Leeds. And now you're taking a step back up into a Brighton team that I feel like has kind of almost gone down a Chelsea model where have 4 players for every single position. I don't think it's really going to work out, in my opinion. I think the fact that it's such a high fee as well for me makes it look a little bit sketchy, in my opinion.
D+? What are we thinking?
D+.
Let's go D+. I think D+ is good. Guys, I've got another potential candidate for right at the very top, I think, in Max Kilman. Maybe not A-star, but I think A. I think he's been really, really good for West Ham so far. And I think it's gone kind of under the radar how a lot of West Ham signings haven't been given a lot of football at the start of this season. I think Jean-Claire Todibo's played under 10 minutes. I think Niclas Fullkrüg's been mainly used off the bench. I think Guido Rodriguez has actually started all 4 games. But aside from that, actually Wan-Bissaka is like a completely different player. But Max Kilman, I think he's second for clearances, second for aerial duel wins, second for progressive passes. And I liked this signing at the time. He's worked under Lopetegui at the time, and it felt like the right level of club for Max Kilman. because he wasn't necessarily going to become a starter for a top 4 club, but joining an upwardly mobile club in West Ham that have had European experience over the last few years, I think it was a really, really smart fit. And I think he's played really well. Maybe a little bit quieter against Fulham at the weekend. West Ham really struggled in that game, got that late Danny Ings equaliser, kind of got played off the park by Fulham. But is everyone happy with that?
I'd be pretty happy with that.
Very happy with that.
Let's do it. Signed, sealed, delivered.
Sweet.
Right, Matthijs de Ligt, £38.5 million to Man United. Fuad, really kind of mixed bag so far. Maybe not at his best against Liverpool, but looked very good against Southampton. Where do you stand on this transfer?
I'm going B, if I'm honest. I think very solid player and coming in with a point to prove. I think back end of the season with Bayern Munich as well, finished the season very strongly. I think proving that 60,000 Bayern Munich fans signed a petition to obviously not have him leave, that says something. But I think coming into United now, you're coming into Ten Hag's almost Ajax 2.0, if you like. But I think Yoro's injury, Lisandro picks up knocks. He is definitely going to get a lot of minutes this season. And I almost feel like he's going to be a bit of an upgrade on Harry Maguire. It's kind of profile-wise, they're very similar. But I just feel like he's almost like a younger, better version. And I hope he fulfills this potential because 4 or 5 years ago, he was being looked at one of the best centre-backs in the world potentially. And he's had a lot of ups and downs of his move to Juve. Bayern Munich was a bit up and down as well. But now at United, you almost feel like biggest league in the world. You've got a big opportunity here. Make that team your own type. Yeah. That's what I want to see from him. So
yeah, absolutely. I think aside from that, there was a moment early on in that game against Southampton where he kind of got skinned by Kyle Walker-Peters, but I thought he recovered really well in that game. Yeah. And I thought he was excellent, to be honest. His reading of the game was really, really brilliant, really up there, very aerially dominant as well. I think he started really well and actually scored at that crucial time as well because Man United having just saved that penalty throw. Onana. It was a real momentum shift. I mean, Mikey, you're the United fan. Have you been impressed pretty much with what you've seen?
Yeah, I think he's been solid. And picked up a knock against Southampton, but then came on against Barnsley, so that's really promising. I think the Liverpool game was it was a second half head loss, wasn't it, from the entire United side, and De Ligt was included in that. But it was interesting. I mean, Dougie, you said it. Was it when the second goal went in?
Yeah, I was there.
De Ligt was the only. Did you say that De Ligt was the only player who really held his head up and kind of was motivating the rest of the side?
Yeah, I was doing some of the social media work behind the scenes that day, and it was really good fun. But seeing the mood in the stadium and the mood amongst the players when that second goal went in, how flat all the players instantly looked, and it took a couple of seconds, then it's kind of De Ligt trying to get everyone back up, and that's the kind of stuff you kind of miss unless you're there in the stadium. So I was really lucky to be there. But yeah, he's got leadership potential as well. His English is obviously perfect. He's played at so many quality clubs. I imagine it's the sort of signing that if I was a United teammate and you saw De Ligt coming in, you're like, this guy has played at top clubs. He's played at a higher level than we've been at in the last few years. He can drag us up. And I think Mazraoui's a good signing as well if he stays fit as well.
I think there's a good mix there of ball playing and physicality. And then, Dalot, once he can play at right back, him and Mazraoui, offer something quite different to each other. But I think Mazraoui's being United's best player this season so far. So yeah, I think De Ligt's really solid. And again, it's just about the price as well. Like if De Ligt doesn't quite live up to his potential, then it's less than £40 million. It's a lot less than Juve paid for him 5 years ago. It's a lot less than Bayern paid for him 2 years ago. I think United have been prone to picking up kind of fallen stars, but when they're kind of 27 or fading stars, let's say, when they're kind of 27, 28, 29, De Ligt's still only 24 years old. Like, he's still got a huge career ahead of him potentially, and has the opportunity to, if United can push on and if they can actually secure a top 4 place this season, then I feel like a signing like De Ligt we're going to look back on as one of the signings of the season. Decisive signing. Let's go with a B for that one, I reckon. Ian Maatsen to Villa. We've kind of seen Luca Dean start most of their games for us, but showed so much promise at Dortmund last year.
Yeah, I think going to be an upgrade on Dean as well eventually, and obviously I think they had Moreno there as well previously. I think upgrade on both of them in my opinion, and finally finding himself a home. We've seen him go on so many kind of loan spells, and kind of you thought, when are Chelsea eventually going to give him the chance? I feel like similarly with Onana, Aston Villa are building an interesting project. These are the types of profile of players you want to bring in at that cusp of wanting to be great but just bubbling at the moment, and I think he's a quality player and might not have had the chances early on, but Villa are in multiple competitions this season, so he'll definitely get a moment, and I'm sure he'll shine.
Yep, there's going to be definitely some moments for him. I reckon we go with a C at the moment. I think it's harder to go more given his lack of game time.
I know what you mean, but I just think as a long-term investment, it depends what we're going on here. I think as a long-term investment, this could be huge. This could be an A.
Yeah.
But then it worries me a little bit that Dean started every game over him. Like, I feel like Maatsen does offer more dynamism, like especially in the Champions League. I just thought he'd get a run out against young boys.
Do you know what though? I do remember when Pedro Porro came in for us, Emerson Royale went on this 2-month of the greatest form of his life ever. Sometimes when a new signing comes in, it does light that fire under you a little bit. So maybe Digne in training the past month or so has been absolutely killing it. But I think I agree with you in terms of long term that passing of the baton will eventually happen and will be a major upgrade.
Yeah, I've seen some Milan fans really struggling with that.
I've been laughing. I've been crying. They gave him Kaka's number and he's running around doing that. Okay, enjoy it.
Yeah, tough start for Emerson Royale over in Milan. Unlike, Joshua Zirkzee's taken some criticism. But again, Mikey, actually, no, let's go to Footward on this. Joshua Zirkzee, I thought against Southampton, he was brilliant. Some of his hold-up play was spectacular.
What a player.
Yeah.
As Pep would say, what a player. Honestly, like some of the touches that guy has, and you don't think he's a 6'4", 90-kilo physical monster, but he plays football like a ballerina. And I hope this season he can really add the goals to his game consistently, because I think he had 2 big chances in that game as well to kind of put away, and those are the kind of moments you think, just put those in the back of the net. But I really think it helped him getting that debut goal. Good confidence start when you come to the Premier League, but I think he's going to turn out to be a great signing and eventually will be Holland's long-term number 9. And we know that's a position they have struggled in since Ruud van Nistelrooy, Klaas-Jan Huntelaar and Van Persie days. So big one for United, I think. And obviously you're a United fan, but what have you made of him so far?
I think it's hard to say that it's not been positive. The thing is, he got kind of stick in that Liverpool game because he's not the quickest. And so when you do need a striker to really hound down opposition, he's not necessarily that. And he was taking quite a long time to get into the box on those counter-attacks. Yeah. That's the one thing I think that counts against him. If United are going to be this really direct side, then I think Zirkzee could struggle in some games. But having said that, he did get on the end of 2 really, really good chances against Liverpool and just didn't put them away.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, I think that's one thing that he's going to have to add to his game is the clinicalness. He's not a supernatural kind of target man number 9. He is a link-up player.
I think he said himself he's a 9.5, isn't it?
9.5, yeah. Like, I mean, it makes perfect sense. He's almost a little bit Gabby Jesus-like, isn't he? And the thing is, ultimately, United desperately needed someone to play back up to Højlund.
Yeah.
And someone who could maybe play alongside Højlund, maybe. Like, let's see. Like, there's no indication that's going to be the case. But so far, as a backup to Højlund, he's been pretty good. Under £40 million. United had an injury-prone Martial, who barely really registered on the radar before. Like that was what United were working with. United didn't really have a backup last season, and Højlund's injury record so far has been patchy at best. So I think Zirkzee, already looks like an incredibly important signing. So I'd be tempted to give him above. Do I say above De Ligt? Maybe not actually.
B-?
That's what I was going to go with. I was going to go with B-. I
think that's fair enough. You'd be happy with that in an exam. I think Zirkzee can be happy with this start. Right, we're now under 35 million or 35 million pounds and under. This is our quick fire section. Yep. So you've got a minute each on these players. Let's keep it speedy. Elliott Anderson to Nottingham Forest. Didn't expect it to go so well. I think it was done at the end of June, wasn't it? When everyone was kind of swapping players to get under PSR. £35 million looked like a lot of money for a player that I think only started 10 league games for Newcastle last year. I think he's been brilliant. Playing on the left-hand side against Liverpool at the weekend in a 4-4-1-1. He's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of legs. Already got 1 assist to his name as well. And Forest have been one of the stories of the season. Their stats before that Liverpool game were absolutely brilliant in terms of shots. Particularly in terms of shots, but also their defence has been solid. Milenkovic has made a huge difference as well. But Elliott Anderson, I think for a player that I didn't expect to have this sort of start, I'm going to go with a B-. Do you guys happy with that?
Yeah, just it's the fee that holds him back. If it was like a 15-20 million pound signing, then I think I'd be tempted to go A, just because he's contributed to such a good start. But yeah, B minus.
B minus. Let's have it. Right, Fuad, Emile Smith-Rowe. You like it?
I think good, very good. I think type of player that Fulham need, and Fulham have almost been like the band of misfits, where they take whoever's not working at other clubs, they bring him here, and all of a sudden it works out well. And I think bringing him and Reece Nelson as well, I think has actually been a very good signing. Starter's been decent as well. I think contributed early on in, was it the debut goal he got?
Yeah.
So for me, I think a very good player, and he's needed that kind of step back from Arsenal. I feel like the past 2 years he's had a lot of injury issues and kind of maybe not being given the opportunities. Now you hope someone like a Marco Silva, who's really, as we said, got this band of misfits together, can really give him the opportunity and say, you know what, you really are the Croydon De Bruyne, as they were calling him a few years ago.
Nice. Yeah, I think B+, maybe even A-.
I think, either of those. Yeah,
B+.
Okay.
So,
Mikey, Yankuba Minteh.
Yeah, I think he's been great. Yeah, I think he's been really, really good. I think great price for someone who's only just turned 20 this year. I've seen some chat that like he has been a little bit sloppy in possession for Brighton, but ultimately if you're coming into a Brighton side and you're immediately taking the spot of Simon Adingra on the right wing, and Brighton have started really, really well, I don't really see any downsides to this move. Like his underlying numbers have been absolutely brilliant. We saw him out-muscle Gabriel, in the build-up to the Joao Pedro goal against Arsenal. Like, how many players can say that they've managed to win out in such a crucial moment against Gabriel, who's been one of the best centre backs in Europe over the last 2 years. I would be very tempted with an A for this. I just think long-term investment and the impact that he's having at Brighton already. I don't know what you guys think.
I'm not mad at
A
that.
works with me. A works with me for sure. Evan Nilsson, £31.7 million to Bournemouth. Big shoes to fill with Solanke leaving. Obviously those 19 league goals have got to be replaced somewhere. It's really been kind of Semenyo picking up the slack so far. It's not been brilliant. 3 Premier League starts, yet to contribute a goal. He's not a huge shot guy as well. And I just think Solanke was so good last year. Having said that, he was up and down for Porto in the past, Evan Nilsson, but I don't think we've seen enough of him so far to give him any more than a C, probably.
I would say you're being generous. I'd have maybe given him a D, but...
Let's go with it. We've given a lot of C's and B's. Let's go with the D. Wilson Odobert, your man, Fuad.
I would probably go with a B.
Yeah.
I think started off very well, had 2 starts, 1 off the bench. I think so far, for me, I think he's looked a very exciting prospect, and I hope he can kind of fulfill that if he's given the opportunity. 1v1 specialist for me, very quick, good chance creator as well, in my opinion. I think, solid B in my opinion.
I tend to agree. I think he's looked really, really bright. Mikey, Joachim Andersen.
Yeah, again, another one I'd be tempted to go for an A with, just because he, again, has been one of the most consistent centre-backs in the league over the last few years. Returning to Fulham, played really well alongside Bassi on the weekend against West Ham in a game that, Fulham really, really should have won. And Fulham in general have looked better this early in the season than I thought they would, given the amount of turnover, given Joao Palhinha leaving in the summer as well, and how over-reliant they were on him. But I think Anthony Robertson already stepping up even more this season in Palhinha's absence. Like, he's such a huge ball winner for them, and I think he's looked more impressive going forward as well for them so far this season. But Joachim Andersen,
A-,
I'd say A- or B+. I feel like I'm giving out the A's right here, but like a lot.
I like the positivity.
Yeah. What do you think?
No, I'm not mad at that. B+, I would have gone.
B+.
But
All right, let's go B+. B+.
I think this next one's potentially got to be pretty low. I feel a bit sorry for him. I really like the player Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. I talked about him, how I love his timing on the ball. I love his decision making at top speed. But when you're competing against 100 million pound midfielders, if you're going to play further forward and you're competing against Palmer and João Felix, etc., it's just difficult to see him getting much game time. And he struggled so far, particularly in that second appearance against Servette, where the reception was not good online after that one. I think Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall, I'm afraid it's got to be a D, and that's nothing against the player. I don't see it working out.
Situational, isn't it? Yeah, I agree.
Lewis Hall to Newcastle, Fuad?
I think good one. Covers multiple positions. I think was
Bit of a
touted
terrier.
very highly. Yeah, was touted very highly coming out of Chelsea, and I think will do a similar job as what Livramento did last year as well. I think that's going to be a great kind of fullback pairing if he does play there full time, because remember he can play in midfield as well. But all in all, I'd actually give this a B+.
Nice.
I'm honest. I quite like it.
Yep,
It's a
good
great
luck
price.
to him. Niclas Fullkrüg, Mikey, hasn't really had a look in so far.
Yeah. We had hopes that he was going to break the
Antonio.
break the Antonio stronghold at West Ham. So far hasn't. 63 minutes in the league so far, 3 sub appearances. I don't know if I can give this any more than a D at the moment. I know it's not a huge price, but he's 31 years old. Like you buy a player like that to come in and have an instant impact, and like you say, Dukes, Lopetegui's so far not used his big signings all that much this season. West Ham have had a very indifferent start to the season, and yeah, going forward, I just think that they're still so far off their potential. Like that this West Ham side should be blowing more teams away, and so far they've struggled overall. So yeah, I think
I said they had the best window this summer, in my opinion, and it would have been the perfect window had they been willing to pay that extra $5 million for John Duran. Just imagine it was John Duran who came in instead of Fullkrüg.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, would have been
Especially
mad.
at that age range as well. 31 years old, I should say, rather. He's got to start playing quite soon. David Raya's down here. I mean, he was signed permanently, but obviously he was played there last year. His stats have gone through the roof compared to last year. And yeah, he's still unbelievable at claiming crosses. What a great signing for £27 million. I think
Easy A star.
I think he's been
Easily,
brilliant.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an A-star. Mats Wiefer, he hasn't played that much yet, Fuad, but big shoes to fill with Pascal Gross leaving Brighton.
Yeah, I think did a very good job at his previous club in the Netherlands as well, and I think he's going to come into the Premier League linked with a few clubs as well, but Brighton is that kind of perfect breeding ground, I feel like, for those types of players, and I hope he gets plenty of minutes because, of course, they've got a Yari who's come through this season as well. Has actually surprised me. He's looked really good. But they've got a lot of players in that midfield, Baleba as well. But I think he's kind of a little bit of a different mould to what they have there. So, personally, I think he'll do good. Maybe you haven't seen the best of him at the moment, but I'd give him a solid B-.
Nice. Yeah, I think he looked good on his debut against Everton. Just been a little bit unlucky with injuries so far. Eddie Nketiah, Mikey, that's an interesting one. There's a lot of Crystal Palace fans that are absolutely sort of falling in love with him.
To get someone who, I think, if he'd had more game time across, multiple Premier League seasons at Arsenal, we would have seen him hit double figures in a league campaign, I think. English as well. I think for that price, I think you can't really go too wrong. And I think Mateta, obviously amazing end to last season, but I think he was always going to need more backup there. I know they have Edouard as well, but Nketiah,
it's a step up on Edouard for sure.
Yeah, I think. Edouard at points has looked great, but hasn't had the consistency in the Premier League. And Nketiah just is a goal getter. Like, he is just a goal getter, and even if it means that he's not going to be starting every game, I think with the creativity that Palace have at their disposal, I know they lost some of that with Elise going, but Eze still offers a lot creatively. I think the likes of Munoz and Tyrick Mitchell, I think they're growing as kind of attacking wing backs as well. I think if you can just have someone like Nketiah who can get on the end of crosses, who can get on rebounds, then I think Palace could, that could win Palace a good 6-7 points.
I think it could add a little tweak to Glasner's system as well, because we've seen him with the 2 10s behind Mateta, but obviously Elise's not there now. Kamada and Ismail Sarr maybe haven't taken to it straight away.
I forget about Ismail Sarr as well, yeah.
And I think Nketiah coming in could maybe turn it into like a front two with Eze just playing that kind of 10 role in behind. But I think similar like Emile Smith-Rowe at Arsenal, it's kind of like a good level to just kind of take a step back and really kind of find your level, and I think it's going to go well.
Yeah, I think it's going to go well as well. B+?
Yeah,
sure.
B+, I think that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Finally, actually, there's 2 more to go. Crysensio Summerville, again, just 66 league minutes. Hasn't really been given too much of an opportunity by Lopetegui so far. I've been kind of surprised, and it's a similar story as I mentioned earlier with a lot of West Ham signings. looked really bright, obviously, for Leeds last year, but I want to see more of him. I think at the moment it's difficult to give him any more than a C, just because of what we've seen so far, or the lack of football we've seen so far. But it's nothing against the player, really. Finally, Fuad, to wrap up the show, Archie Gray. Haven't seen much of him, but what a player, what a talent.
Special.
You're tempted to go A-star here, aren't you? Tempted.
Is there something above that? Yeah, we might have to go there. But I think the only concern I have with Archie Gray is we're actually very well stacked in the midfield, and I think this season he's potentially going to be playing a lot of cover in centre-back, right-back position, because I know we didn't even register Jed Spence in the Europa League, if I'm not mistaken. So I think he's going to be permanently covering for that. But all in all, I think a very, very talented player. Played 42 games, I think, for Leeds in the Championship last season, playing multiple positions. I so badly want to give it an A, but we haven't exactly seen enough. But I think a B+ is what I'm going to go with, because the upside, I just think he's going to be an England international within a couple of years. Declan Rice, you've been warned.
Absolutely. I mean, the promise is there. And for so long in midfield, we didn't have any ball players. You know, Archie Gray coming through, Angel Gomez as well, Adam
Cobby.
Wharton, Cobby. You know, for so long it looked really thin in that area. Not so much anymore. As you say, Declan Rice. I love Declan Rice, but there's a lot of competition coming through there as well. But guys, that is our complete list of rating every new signing over £25 million in the Premier League. Quite a marathon, but we did it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. What are your ratings, though, crucially? Who would you give an A star to? Who would you give a D to? I mean, it is early days, of course, but leave your thoughts in the comments below. Massive thanks to Mikey, as ever. Particular big thanks to Fuad, our special guest today. Leave your respect and appreciation in the comments section, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.